Hi, welcome all to the last module for this week. So we are in module 34 now. This last module is going to be about Verilog and modeling sequential elements in Verilog. So the first part of the video is going to be about styles. Last time we discussed different kinds of styles. So I will talk a little bit about that, and then for the rest I will talk about sequential elements. So if you go back to the previous week's video on Verilog, you would have noticed that there are three different ways of doing things. So you can either have assigned statements, or you can have always blocks, or you can use primitives, and you can also instantiate these and make different kinds of designs. So I also put the design files out for you to practice with. So one thing that I did not talk about last week is that I did not say when to use what. So there are three different styles, but as a designer, when do you use what? So let's start with the multiplexer, for instance. So the 2 to 1 multiplexer, the 2 to 1 multiplexer is fairly easy. It's easy to describe in terms of equations. So you could go and write an assigned statement with the equation for a 2 to 1 mux, or in general you go and write something which is a which is using if statements. So but it's a very small design, so it may not matter so much. So the key thing is you will use assigned statements only when the expression that you have on the right side is fairly simple and it's known to everyone. So if you have a case like that, then assigned statements are okay. Or if you want to do some little bit of logic, just you want to do AND of 2 wires or OR of 2 wires or things like that, then you use an assigned statement. Whereas when you make more complicated designs, it's not feasible to do assigned statements. So one example is the 7 segment decoder. So we discussed this in one of the classes earlier. So if I want to do a 7 segment decoder, I may take inputs which are from 0 to 9, and I have outputs which are going to be 7 segments. Each segment will light up one segment of a LED. So I want to take inputs from 0 to 9, for which I want to display digits 0 to 9. For 10 to 15, I want to keep it blank. So this is a specification that I gave earlier. If you want to do something like that, and if you want to do it in Verilog, it does not make sense to go and take each and every combination of input and derive every combination for output. So I do not want things like segment 0 is on when these things are on, when segment 1 is on when these things are on, and so on. So if you go and think about it as for every output I will specify the combination of inputs for which it has to be on, it breaks down the way designers think. So for us it is easy to think about, oh, for case 0 I want all of these on, if it is 1 I want all of these on. It is easier for us to think that way rather than if it is any of these inputs I want the topmost segment on. So if you derive equations, you will be forced to do that. For every output you will derive an expression which is in terms of inputs. You can go and put an assigned statement there, but that is not the best way to do it. So what I want to show is how, this use of case statement for something like that. So let us start with this. So I have already put in the code here for all the Verilog code that I am going to discuss today. I have already typed it in today. So let us see this. So I am designing a 7 segment decoder. In the 7 segment decoder there is an output which is for the 7 segments, and it is supposed to take decimal 3 to 0. And what I have is I declare code as reg. The reason why we declare regs is if you have to do any assignment inside an always block, then it can be done to regs, it can't be done to wires. So we any assignment that we are going to do inside an always block, we will do it only, so the left side is for code, so it has to be declared as a reg. So do not worry about why it is so and so on. So this is, we leave it to the language designers. The language designers have decided it will be like this, so let us stick with that. So given that we have declared reg 6 to 0 of code, this means there is code of 6, code of 5, code of 4, code of 3 all the way up to code of 0, and this is a 7-bit code. So now if I am constructing a device which has 4 inputs, 4 bits, so that is called decimal. Always at decimal I have written a statement here, an always block. So this always block begins here and ends somewhere here. So I have scrolled it up. So begin and end for the always block is here, and within that I have written a case statement. So let us see what the case statement does first. So it does case on decimal. So since there are 4 bits, there will be 16 possible choices. On the left side you see the 10 choices that matter to us, case 0 to case 9, and for each of the case we assign code equals something. So for instance this one says code, so 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all of them have to be on, and 0, which stands for the middle segment, is off. So the meaning of this one is code 6 is on the top, then you have code 5, code 4, code 3, code 2, code 1, which goes in cyclic order, and the code 0 is supposed to be for the middle segment. So this one is very clear, it is easy to write. If I want code 0, I can then go and quickly write, oh, I want all the things on the periphery to be 1 and this to be 0. So for if I want 1 to be displayed, the top segment must be off, then the rightmost segments are both on, all the other segments are off. So this is how we think and we imagine the design. So why bother writing equations for each and every bit of code? So what you see here is something very drastically different. You are not seeing code of 6 equals an equation, code of 5 equals an equation, and so on. Instead we are assigning code of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, all of them to a vector, and the reason why we do that is it's much more natural for us to think for each case what should be the different values that should be assigned to code as opposed to what each bit of code must be. So let us go and look at for instance 6. So it has a vector which says one segment, the top right segment is off, so you can see that here, that is 0. So this is simple and nice, and if it is not any of the 10 cases from 0 to 9, by default code is assigned to all zeros. So this is an operator which is slightly more interesting. So what it says is one tick B0 means one bit of 0, and this 7 and within curly braces if you put one tick B0, it says I want 7 copies of bit 0. So what this code is getting is 7 copies of bit 0, which means 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, which means the display will be off. So this is how you can model a 7 segment decoder. So the nice thing about this is, for whatever reason later I decide that, oh, I want for 10 and 11 also I want A and B to be displayed, I can go and write case statements here. If you derive equations, you have to go and plug in more complicated things, especially if you have simplified it, it becomes worse. So instead this gives you the flexibility. You are thinking about a decoder, so you want 4 to 7 decoder, then this is a very direct way to write it. So it gives you something very nicely. So whenever you know equations, you use the assign block. If you do not know the equations but you have a lot of choices, and for each choice you want to specify what a certain output bit must be, then you use a case statement. So in this case there were 16 choices, for the 10 choices these values were all different, so I want to assign for each of the 10 choices. For choices from number 10 to number 15, the last 6 choices, I want all of them to be 0, so if it is not any of these they get 0. So the key thing is, for all the 16 possible combinations I have explicitly listed them. In fact if you want to display a hexadecimal digit, let us say A, B, C, D, E, F also you want to display, then you will put 6 more case statements below this statement. From line number 22 you will put 6 more case statements. So this is okay if for every input combination you know exactly what the output is. In some sense we have actually put the truth table for each of the code bits. This is okay if you do that, but even this is not good for a different kind of a problem. So let us switch to the next problem. In the next problem, so we discussed this another problem called priority. So forget the code for a while now. We did this little thing. So I said there is a boss, there is a manager, an assistant manager, and a clerk. These 4 have requests, and based on the 4 requests there should be 4 grants. So we designed a state machine for that, but let us say now I want to design a combinational circuit to do that. Based on the inputs, there are 4 lines that are going to come in. They are going to be called devices 0 to 3. So device 0 is for the boss, devices of 1 is for the manager, devices of 2 is for the assistant manager, and device of 3 is for the clerk, and we want to see who gets a grant, whether the boss gets the grant or whatever, right. So we know that we want this priority, D0 is greater than D1, greater than D2, greater than D3. So that is the order, and we want exactly one of G0 to G3 to be turned on. So this is the problem specification. So for this problem specification, you can go and write all the 16 combinations and you can derive equations, and you can write grant equals 1 under these conditions. So sorry, grant of 0 equals 1 under these conditions, grant of 1 equal to this equation, grant of 2 equal to this equation, and so on. You can do that. That is not natural. You can actually try and do a case statement, but then I have 4 devices, you will list 2 power 4 combinations. Tomorrow if I give you 10 devices for which I want priority, then you should be writing 2 power 10 lines, right. That is not feasible either. What you are looking for is, in some sense, you want priority of one line over the other and so on. So let us look at the picture here. I have already drawn the hardware diagram that I want. So this structure is called a priority encoder. What we have is, we have device 0, device 1, sorry, devices of 0, devices of 1, devices of 2 and devices of 3. These are 4 single bit values. I give them as a select to a mux. So this mux is a 2 to 1 mux, as in it takes 2 inputs and puts one of these things at the output, but each of these lines is a 4 bit line. So this is a 4 bit line and this is a 4 bit line. So let us see how this whole thing will look at priority. Let us take a small example. Let us say D3 was 1, D1 was 1 and D0 was 1. Let us assume that D2 was 0. If this is the case, then what would happen? It means that there is a manager who is requesting, assistant manager is not requesting, clerk is requesting and the boss is requesting. So D0 is for the boss. Now how would this thing work? If D3 is 1, it places 0001 on this line. So this 0001 will come onto this line. Now D2 is 0, which means this line would appear here. So that will appear as 0001. Now if D1 is 1, it takes this line which has 0100 and places it here, and this one overwrites this combination and instead places this combination onto the output. So essentially D0 being 1 will place 1000 on the output. So what we have given is, even though there are different priorities coming up to this level, at this level D0 being 1 or 0 can decide which one should go. So D0 has higher priority over other D1, D2, D3. So this is the hardware structure that I want. So if you want to do something like this, so let us see the code again. If you want to do something like this, it is natural for us to, if you were to write it in a language, it is natural for us to go and think in what order the inputs should be checked. So let us see the code here. I have written an always statement. It takes all the devices. Add devices means all the bits of devices of 0 to 1, 2, 3, all 4 of these bits. If any of those 4 bits change, you have to reevaluate your grant. So who is going to get the access to the device, you have to reevaluate it. So the way it is written, if you want priority encoder, is if devices of 0 is 1, then grant goes to the boss. So the code is grant of 0 becomes 1, grant of 1, 2, 3 are all 0. So from left side to right side it is 0 to 3, so grant of 0 becomes 1. Else if devices of 1 is 1, so if this will happen only if the boss has not made a request. So if the boss has not made a request, only then you go and check if the manager has made a request. If the manager has not made a request, only then you go and check if the assistant manager has made a request, and so on. So that is what we have here. So there are 4 cases. There is a first if case, then else if, and else if. If none of them made a request, then there is no access that needs to be given. So you have grant equals this. So this is a much more easier way to express what we have in mind, and in terms of hardware also this is what we are looking for. We are looking for a mux kind of thing. Now in this setup, if I say that, oh, by the way, it was not 4 people, there were 10 people and I have the hierarchy of the 10 people, and can you modify the design, then all you have to do is go and change these to go from 0 to 9, and in here you have to go and add 6 more lines for each one of the new people that you have added, as opposed to if you did this using case statement, you would have gone from 2 power 4 lines to 2 power 10 lines for which you have to explicitly give. That does not make sense at all. So this is much more cleaner. This is using an always block, the previous one also used an always block. However, even within the always block, which kind of statement you pick, so there is beauty in the code here. This is much more natural, and in terms of hardware, this is much more easier to translate, and this is less error prone, because this explicitly says these are the bits I am looking at, and that is all. If you are to type even let us say 2 power 6 lines, somewhere you may make a mistake, so that will not happen here. So this is a very nice style for writing this priority encoder. So now I am going to switch gears and talk about sequential elements. So there are 2 sequential elements that I want to talk about. One is the latch, the other is the flip flop. So let us look at latch. So I have written down the modules already. Let me explain how these things are designed. So a single bit latch has a single output Q, and input D, and an input enable, and these are the 3 inputs. So I assume that Q bar is not needed, so I have only modeling for Q, and I have used a always statement. So in fact, if I want to model sequential elements, you cannot do assign, you cannot instantiate basic logic gates. There is no basic logic primitive for sequential elements. So latch is a sequential element, so we have to write it using always block. So let us see the always block here. This always, so the latch has 2 signals, right? There is an enable signal and there is a D signal, and both these signals are actually what are called triggering signals, because change in any one of those can result as a change in the output. So both enable and D are triggering signals, so we put both in the sensitivity list. So both the inputs enable and D come in the sensitivity list, and what do we want now? If enable is 1, then Q should follow D, right. So we have that here. If enable is 1, Q equals D, and if enable is 0, what should you do? If enable is 0, you are supposed to remember the old value of Q, right. You are not supposed to change Q at all. In fact, if you do not change the value of Q, you do not have to write it as else Q equals Q, you do not have to do that. Automatically, if enable is 0, whatever the value of Q is, it will be automatically retained. So implicitly, if you see the statement, right, Q retaining its old value is implicit. If enable is 1, Q equals D, else what? Else retain the old value of Q. So that is implicit, and that is what we have here in the top half. So what we have for a module latch is, if enable is 1, Q is D, and that is it. So there are a few interesting things here. We have put both the elements on the sensitivity list, because a change in enable or a change in D can change the value of the latch's output, and we did not have an else clause. In fact, if you put a else clause and if you put Q equal to A, let us say there were 3 inputs, enable or D or A, and if you do, if enable is 1, Q equal to D, else Q equal to A, that would mean you are actually inferring a multiplexer, because if enable is 1, then that is the select line, Q selects D, otherwise Q would select A. In this case, we are not inferring a multiplexer, we want a latch, there is no else clause. So if you want a latch, you do not put the else clause and you leave it as it is. In fact, when you are designing a mux, if you leave a else clause, that is a problem, because it may infer it as a latch. We will discuss that in a later class, but as of now, you can see that the always block is a fairly simple statement, always at enable or D, you do this. Now let us take a little while to think about what a flip flop is. So if you think about a flip flop is a little peculiar device. So it has a clock which is an input, which is the triggering signal, and D is supposed to be a sampled signal. So a change in D will not reflect as a change in output unless there is a clock that came to sample it. So this is the deal with flip flop, right. So let us see the module design for a flip flop. Flip flop also takes Q and D as inputs, D and clock as inputs, and Q as an output. So we have a reg Q as before. So anything that is assigned inside an always statement, we are going to declare a reg for that. And let us look at the sensitivity list first. The sensitivity list, it does not have always at clock, it has some new thing called POSEDGE of clock. So always at clock would mean this statement should get executed when D changes from, when clock changes from 0 to 1, as well as when clock changes from 1 to 0. That is not what we want. For a flip flop, if it is a rising edge flip flop, then we want it only or positive edge triggered flip flop, we want it to sample the value D only when clock goes to 1 from 0. So this always at POSEDGE of clock, this POSEDGE is a keyword, always at POSEDGE will look for whether the clock is going from 0 to 1. So this statement, this always block will get triggered only when the rising edge condition is satisfied. If the rising edge condition is satisfied, then Q equals D, again implicitly else do nothing. Do nothing means keep the old value, so which means during the level 1 or when the flip flop goes from 1 to 0 or when the clock is at 0, in all these cases you are going to retain the old value. So the only case where D should be sampled is when there is a rising edge of the clock, and that is what you have here. Always at POSEDGE of clock, if clock equals 1, which means you have risen to 1, then Q equals D, otherwise implicitly it is not going to change anything. So I have also written a test bench for this. What I have done is I have written a test bench in which there is a, so this is actually both a latch and a flip flops test bench. I have instantiated a latch here and I will call the output of the latch as QL. I have instantiated a flip flop here and I am going to call this flip flops output QFF, and I have a clock here which is toggling every so every 10 time units, and I have a data which is actually changing every 4 time units. So and I have put various other things so that the simulation will end and so on. So let me save it and run it. Okay, so I actually want the waveform to be shown also, so let me run it once more. So let us see this here. So it actually opened up all the things that are in my waveform, but what we care about is the enable line, which is the clock that I have used, D, QFF and QL. So let me move this one up. So I want this is my clock signal, this En is called my clock signal, D is my data input, QFF is my flip flops output and QL is my latches output. So forget all the lines below that, so it is showing everything inside the design also. So if you have instantiated something, it is also showing all the signals as seen from the inside the instance. Let us look at the top 4 things. So in the top 4 things, the clock is a positive edge triggered clock. So whenever it is going positive, D gets sampled. So for the Q flip flop, you can see that when it went positive, we copied, it sampled 0, then it went positive, at that point it sampled 1, again it went positive here, it sampled 0, it sampled 1 here and so on. So you can see that Q flip flop is behaving the way it should be. QL on the other hand, right, is not sampling only on the edge. So at this point level became 1 and the input was 0, so QL became 0, but this part where D is 1 is also tracked. Then D became 0, so that became 0 here. So let me pick a line here, at this point D is still 0. Then if I pick between these two waveform, between these two places, enable is 0, which means any change in input will not reflect a change as output for the latch also. So you can see that only when enable is on, D is copied to QL, when enable is off, D is not copied to QL. So this is the design that we wanted for a flip flop and a latch, so we have that here. So I suggest that you go and change this POSEDGE, you remove the POSEDGE and just keep it as clock and see what happens, and try and reason what would happen if I just had clock here instead of passage of clock. And finally, I want to talk about the fourth one, where it is a register. So in this case, it is a 4 input 4 output register. So it is a register which has a parallel input and a parallel output. So in the parallel input is D, it has 4 bits D3, D2, D1, D0, and it has 4 bits as output Q3, Q2, Q1, Q0, and it has a reset and a clock. So this DFFSR is a D flip flop based synchronous register. So that is the name that I have used, D flip flop based synchronous register. So what is a synchronous register? It is a synchronous reset. So a flip flop with synchronous reset is one in which the clock comes in. Once the clock comes in, it samples both reset and D. If reset is 1, the register is set to 0. If the reset is 0, then D gets sampled. So this is the meaning that we want, and you can see that that meaning that we need is actually automatically reflected in the code here. So we have always at passage of clock. So this is looking similar to the flip flop itself, right? The basic flip flop that I wrote, it has only passage of clock. If passage of clock comes in, you then go and check if reset is 1. So what this is doing is, when the rising edge of clock comes in, we are sampling the value of reset. If reset is 1, then Q is 0, else Q equals D. So this looks like for all the combinations of reset, we are actually assigning the value of Q, but this is not a combinational circuit. This is still a sequential circuit, because the way we have modeled it, so if I put D, reset, CLK, all of them in the sensitivity list, this is supposed to be modeling a combinational circuit. In a sequential circuit, only the sampling signals must appear in the sensitivity list, and the sampled signals should be used inside directly. In this case, both reset and D are sampled signals. We are sampling the value of reset, we are based on the condition of reset, we will sample the value of D. So that is written in this form. If reset is 1, Q is 0, else Q is D. So this is the specification for a D flip flop based synchronously resetable register. So there are two things that I have done. So in this case, I have used input and output as 3 to 0, and in the devices I had declared it as 0 to 3. So unlike programming languages like C or C++, Verilog will let you pick the leftmost index. So if you say 0 to 3, the leftmost index is 0 and the rightmost index is 3. If you declare something as 3 to 0, the leftmost index is 3 and the rightmost index is 0. So depending on how you declare, you have to interpret the bits appropriately. So for the devices and grant, I said the leftmost should be called 0 and the rightmost should be called 3, whereas in the D flip flop, I said the leftmost bit of Q is Q of 3 and the rightmost bit is Q of 0. So this is just convenience, because designers think about a set of connections in different ways. So Verilog lets you actually pick indices the way you want. So in fact, you can even say Q of 5 to 2. So if you do not want index always starting from 0, you can say 5 to 2. Maybe for some reason you are picking, you have a bus of width 8, there are 8 parallel lines going, you want to inspect only the bit position 5 to 0, you can actually slice only that and use it also. So Verilog gives you a lot of flexibility for these things, because that is how hardware designers do it. So it is not correct to go back and ask, what is this software feature that I have? I have this software feature in C and C++, how to do that in Verilog? That is the wrong way to approach hardware design. So the way to look at it is, in hardware I want this, how do I model this in Verilog? So Verilog should not be thought about as a substitute for a sequential language like C or C++. So Verilog is primarily for hardware modeling. So the way you should think about Verilog itself is, oh, I want to do this in hardware, how do I model this in Verilog? Or given something in Verilog, what would the hardware implication of that be? What would it be inferred in hardware as? Because there are tools which can take Verilog code and generate gates for you. So for those tools, it is necessary that you write Verilog in a certain way, so that the tools can interpret it as a template for, oh, this is a mux, this is a decoder, this is a flip flop, this is a latch, and so on, and generate appropriate gates for you. So there are hundreds of things that you can do inside Verilog. I am teaching a very small subset of Verilog that is needed for hardware design. There are a lot more things like for loops and so on which are in Verilog. They do not have semantics for hardware always. So that is the reason why I am going to not actually teach those things. Once you get comfortable with how to use Verilog well, then in a later course or sometime when you pick up design skills, I suggest that you go and explore the other options. Till then you use the fundamental things. By looking at the code, you should be able to say that this is the hardware you are trying to infer, and many tools in fact keep it simple. They cannot handle too many complicated cases. So they expect your code style to be fairly simple and straightforward, from which hardware can be inferred. So this brings me to the end of this week's lecture. So in this week again we saw quite a few things. We looked at state machines and different aspects of state machines. Particularly we looked at state assignment and we looked at state minimization. We also had an earlier video on delay analysis of a sequential circuit. So I suggest that you go and review the material, because these are the advanced topics in a digital design course. So other things you might have seen in textbooks, but delay analysis is not something that you see in textbooks usually, but this is a useful thing to learn, because this is useful for when you take up a job or even when you go on interview. These things might be useful. Of course Verilog as a language that I am teaching is also useful if you want to get into the hardware design industry. So I suggest that you absorb the material slowly but steadily, and again if there are questions, please come back on the forum. I see that the questions on the forums are usually about when is the quiz, can I extend the deadline and so on. I do not see technical discussions on the forum other than what is related to the quiz. Nobody is asking questions about the course itself or the material in the course and so on. So please participate, because if you have a doubt, you post it, probably others also have the doubt, they will come back and discuss and so on. So that is a healthy way to run this course. So otherwise this is just like being a mute spectator to the whole ordeal, and so for me I do not get to see you, so I can't see how you are reacting and how you are learning. So it is better that you discuss things on the forum, and only then I will know how you are reacting to the material in the course. So this brings me to the end of week 6, and in week 7 we will have more exciting and new topics, both related to Verilog and digital design. So I will see you this week. We also have Verilog assignments, programming assignments. So this video is necessary for you to go and do the assignments. So go and review all the Verilog videos before you attempt the assignments. So thank you and see you next week.